And somehow in all this evidence, the public was still asking, okay, but he looks innocent. Able look at him even you. Able look at him even you. The Lord would like to remind you that in other defenses, handsome is not one of them. There's no section of the penal code that reads, provided the accused had a nice beard. No. This is a court of law, not a barbershop. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Katiba. Jacque. Today we have a special episode because for the first time since we started this show, we're doing a criminal case. And criminal cases are different because in constitutional law, we argue ideas. But in criminal law, we argue facts. And if you get the facts wrong, somebody somewhere loses their freedom. So, yes, this episode will be a bit longer, but details are not a bother, don't worry. Because this case lived in Kenya's head for years. You probably know about it from the description. And people debated it on TV panels, on radio, on WhatsApp, and in even barbershops. And by the time the court delivered the judgment, half the country had already written a verdict in their hearts. But courts don't run on hearts. Courts run on proof. This is the story of the murder of Monica Kimani. Now, one woman died. Two people were charged. One person was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. But one person was acquitted. Same night, same apartment, same dock. And the question is not how you feel. What Katiba and Jacque is trying to answer today is why did the law land where it landed, okay? Because here on Katiba and Jacque, we don't do vibes. We love your vibes. Trust me, we love your vibes. We do evidence. Okay, so just a short summary. Monica Kimani was a successful businesswoman. She operated between Kenya and South Sudan. And on 19 September 2018, Monica flew in from Juba, South Sudan, and went home to her apartment at Lamuria Gardens in Kilimani. Anytime the show starts in Kilimani, you know things are about to go down. Now, anyway, that evening she had visitors. And the important point about it is that Monica was open to visitors that night. She was not waiting for one specific person, or she did not say she was. So there were different adults coming and going. People she knew, or people connected to people she knew. And knowing someone does not mean you're expecting them at night. Now, at around 8 p.m., Jowie Rongo arrives at the gate. Security says he was dressed in a white kanzu and a jacket and a maroon cap. He produces an ID with the name Dominic Bisera Haron. Now, Jowie! He used Dominic, bro. He used an ID of someone called Dominic. So, picture this. He was in a cool kid imam disguise. You know, he's in a white kanzu. It's like he's come to preach at a random madrasa. He looks like he has moral authority. But a nice cap. And what does he call himself? Dominic. Not Imam Dominic. Not Sheikh Khalifa El-Baziri Dominic. No. Just Dominic. I don't know what's worse. The disguise or the name. Or even the fact that the watchman said, okay. Of course, definitely this is the Dominic, you know. Because at some point, the lie didn't even need effort. I think Joy just moved with confidence and aura, you know. And here is the part viewers get confused about. Security did not call Monica and say, hey, Joey is here. They called her and said, there's a visitor here calling himself Dominic. And Monica said, sawa, wacha ingie. So why would Monica allow Dominic if she wasn't expecting Dominic? Because Monica wasn't approving a name. She was approving a person. See, adults don't audit gate aliases. They approve entry. So the Dominic deception was aimed at security, not at Monica. And that's why you can know someone without knowing what name they use downstairs. Okay. If you live in other places, wanaingianga tu wako. Sisi watu tuko na watchman. Anyway, now, before we move on, let me tell you the luckiest man in this entire case. The owner of the ID, the real Dominic. Because he reported that his ID was lost. Imagine losing your ID in Nairobi and your punishment becomes your name appearing at the gate of a murder scene. Maybe Dominic had never been to Kilimani in his first place. We don't know. But anyway, if Dominic had not reported it, we'd have a whole extra subplot right now. So Dominic trying to convince the police he's not a teleporting criminal. Please report your ID. So yes, this is a public service announcement to anyone who's watching this. If you lose your ID, kindly report it immediately to the nearest police station, because someone out there is about to borrow your name for some nonsense. Some proper nonsense. Okay? Now, back to Monica's apartment. Other people came into Monica's apartment that evening. There was a neighbor, there was another friend, and other visitors who later gave evidence in court. And this is important because that night was not a straight line. Because this is Nairobi. Okay? People came, people left. Like your heart. sorry, that was personal. Okay. The night thinned out. One leaves, another leaves. A witness says he left Monica behind with one man. You don't know who this is. And the gate records that the last exit from Monica's house was at 11:21 p.m. After that, the guards say nobody else went in. And that's why something we call the last seen doctrine mattered. And this doctrine does not mean that the last person equals the murderer. No. It means if you're the last person with someone who is found dead shortly after, the law expects an explanation. You don't get to vanish into silence like a WhatsApp group admin. No. You have to explain what happened, and you better explain good. Okay? And this is where Jowie's defense team fights, right? First, they attack the reliability of the guards. They then raise the possibility of other people having access. So they try to loosen the timeline. Because if I'm a lawyer, I need to just break that last scene hinge. I just break it kidogo. After I break it, the circumstantial door stops closing in on my client. Okay. Now, back to the story. The next day, Monica's family can't reach her. Her brother goes to the apartment and he gets entry to the house. The police are called because it's a gruesome scene. Monica's body is found at the bathroom, inside the bathtub. Now, let's be clear. This was not a Whitney Houston situation. The bathtub was not the cause of death. The court did not say she drowned. Okay? The postmortem evidence by the court found that she had died from manual strangulation and multiple stab wounds, and other details that we will not make too gory for here. Please look at the case yourself. So she was not shot. This was not an accident. It wasn't chaos that got out of hand. No. If anything, the pathologist in court described that murder was controlled force. Calculating. From this, the court inferred malice aforethought. There was intent before. This was not a panic thing that happened. Okay. Now, for scale, this case was not decided in one weekend. From the murder in September 2018 to the judgment in 2024, this case took over 5 years. And the court had evidence from over 20 witnesses. I'm talking about watchmen, neighbors, friends, police, forensic experts, and the pathologist. And while all this was happening, the country was waiting. We were debating. Oh, we accused, we counter-accused, we defended, it went on and on. Because Kenyans are very efficient at forming opinions, and opinions is the fastest way to do things. But evidence is the slower one. Now, before we get to the final conviction, we must talk about what happened at the bail stage for Jowie Rongo. Because this is where one Justice Wakiaga enters the story. I know you wanted to hear about this. At bail, the court is not deciding guilt. Okay, it's deciding risk. Will you show up during the case? Will you interfere with witnesses as the case is continuing? Do you even have a stable residence? That's what the court is trying to figure out, whether they should grant you bail or not grant you bail in the first place, right? So, can the court supervise you? And in Jowie's bail application, Justice Wakaga didn't just say bail denied and move on. No. He remarked on Jowie's lifestyle. On the record, describing him as having no permanent abode, moving between women, and depending on women. And this is where the public phrase, woman eater, grew legs. Now, here's a legal point. Judge Wakiaga was not sentencing him for being romantic with someone. He was saying, you live a transition life, an unstable residence, you have unstable anchors, and a person like that is harder to supervise and more likely to disappear during the court hearing. Okay. And during bail hearings, court look for stability. Not because stability means you're innocent. No. Stability means you are traceable. At the bail ruling, becomes important later, not because it proves guilt, it doesn't, but because it shows that even early on, the court saw a man whose life had no fixed center, And Kenya, being Kenya, turned a bail ruling into a moral sermon. Now, back to the proper trial. There was no CCTV inside the apartment. There were no eyewitnesses to the killing, and there was no confession. So the prosecution had to build a chain of what happened. And they said there was entry under disguise, there was evidence of being last seen, there was movements and clothing, changes. And then Jowie's behavior after. Because at around 1 a.m., Jowie called a neighbor and asked for paraffin so he could burn some items. I don't know about you, but innocent people do not wake up at 1 a.m. with a sudden passion for evidence management. Anyway, burnt items were later recovered on the scene. And then comes the strangest part of all. There was a gun. Okay? Let me be clear. The gun was not the murder weapon. Okay? Monica had not been killed with a firearm. I think we made that very, very clear. But where does the gun come in then? The gun comes in after the murder as part of a cover-up. In an effort to build an alibi, Jowie had shot himself. This is medically confirmed that the wound was self-inflicted. But he had gone to the police and reported, "I've been attacked by thugs." Why? Because this was not just a lie. It was an alibi being built in real time. You can't accuse me of killing someone if at the same time it's on police record that I was being attacked by thugs. You see, I couldn't have been involved in anything else. I was too busy getting shot and reporting it. That's an alibi. That's a very loud alibi. And here's where Jacque Maribe gets pulled into the situation. Because Jacque repeated that story to the police. She participated in the lie. But here is the legal line you insisted on, and we will say clearly. Lying with someone does not mean you automatically know why they were lying. Okay. The prosecution still had to prove that Jacque knew Monica had been murdered and that lie was meant to cover up the murder. But the prosecution could not. Now, back to Jowie's alibi. Police recovered the bullet in the house where the self-shooting occurred, which was bad for Jowie because thugs rarely break into houses just to return evidence, And come a bullet flash and niache bullet up. Okay. Now, the alibi collapses because the gun didn't explain how Monica died. It explained how someone tried to escape responsibility after. Okay, then why did you lie to the police about? Because in here, Dominic was at Lamuria and he was somewhere else getting shot. Now, Jacque, here's a cruel irony. It was Jacque Maribe who helped announce Monica's Kimani's death to the station. After telling the police about thugs shot Jowie's story, which the court accepted was false. And still she was acquitted. Why? Why, Sway? Why? Because criminal law punishes what is proved. Okay? There was no evidence that placed her at Lamuria. There was no CCTV. There was no phone data. So there was no proof of common intention. They didn't communicate with Jowie during that period. Okay. So two people can sit together in the dock. They can be romantically linked. You can even share a scandal and still face different outcomes. Love is not joint liability. Dating is not conspiracy. The Constitution does not recognize +1 as criminal responsibility. Now, in this case, there's a fella called Brian Kasaine. He was also arrested as the third guy in this situation because the police believed he was also involved in the killing. He was Joy's friend. He was involved in the killing and in the cleanup. This is another important legal principle. The law treats accomplices after the fact differently from the killer. Okay. Helping before or during the murder can make you look like a murderer. Can make you a murderer, actually. But helping after, that's by hiding, lying, assistance, is a different one. It's still a serious allegation, but it's not murder. So, wakafinya Brian kidogo. Brian cooperated. He then turned into a state witness. Not a hero, just a discounted narrator. The judge treated his evidence as tainted and only relied where it was corroborated by other evidence. In legal terms, that's cooperation. In street terms, not snitching. He was reflective. He didn't switch sides. He switched survival strategies. Acha alijitoa tu roho safi akasema Jowie, msalaba yako ni msalaba yako. And somehow in all this evidence, the public was still asking, Aki, but he looks innocent. Double look at him even you. Double look at him even you. The Lord would like to remind you that in all the defenses, handsome is not one of them. There's no section of the penal code that reads, provided the accused had a nice beard. No. This is a court of law, not a barber shop. And in the end, the judge did what judges are meant to do. Ignore the crowd, ignore the cameras, ignore the attraction, the anger, the sympathy, and ask one question. Was the chain complete of circumstantial evidence? For Jowie, yes. For Jacque, no. That's why one was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, and the other walked free. Now, this case matters because it teaches us something uncomfortable, and that is, justice is not most endangered by hatred. No, it's endangered by attraction, loyalty, and a good story that sounds better than the truth. This has been Katiba na Chai, and if this is how we handle our first criminal case, trust me, we are just getting started. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Jowie.